All right, we're on now, and Michaela, this is for you. I'm taking the time to hold this big old fat microphone while we're talking to make sure that you can hear what we're saying later on as well. So we love you. About I want to say how long ago was it when how long ago now that we were going to First Assembly, and I did.
She was still, and I used to wear a, what do they call those?
the
Sling.
the
The sling.
poncho thing that she's
Yeah.
laying down inside of there.
Hannah was in a sling.
Yeah, still breastfeeding and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was back then. So that's what 14 years ago, a little bit more. And I had an opportunity to do a teaching on faith, and just in my process of researching that, I learned so many things about faith that I did not know, did not understand. And being it, 14, 15 years later, I realized that still a lot of what we understand about faith at large are still some things that I think that we miss. And so it's been on my heart to share these things with people as I get opportunity. I can't remember exactly what I called the teaching. I was asked to teach on faith, and we were doing like these multiple Bible studies where you had different, classrooms you can go in, and I was asked to speak on faith. And so I ended up coming up with, as I studied it, that I kind of did like a play on words. Preachers like to do their little preachery play on words or whatever. But from Hebrews 11, where it says faith is substance. But I came up with, from studying it, that faith is not what we thought faith was. That there's so much more to it that I don't think that we see or understand typically on a day-to-day basis as we are people trying to live and walk by faith. In 2 Kings chapter 6, it's a few different passages of scripture that I want to hit. And so this one is a little bit longer one. So I'm going to kind of, thank you, honey. I'm going to kind of give you the paraphrase backstory, and it might be a particular verse that I want us to look at. But 2 Kings chapter 6, it starts off, I think it's a different story than what we're going to be talking about. I think it was when somebody dropped the axe head into the water, and it was borrowed, and Elisha comes and puts a stick on the water, and the axe head floats up. But then immediately after that story is over, it talks about the king of Syria. And the king of Syria is upset. He's very angry because he has gone to war against Israel, and he's trying to set up ambushes. So his strategy is, I'm going to try to do surprise attacks. That's going to be the way I fight this war. But every time he sets up a surprise attack, and he's got one of his posses out hiding somewhere where he, has heard that Israel is going to come past this way, my boys are going to jump out, and catch them by surprise before they can do anything. But every single time that he sets up an ambush, Israel goes a different way. They take a different route. And he's like, what's going on? What's happening? So he finally concludes he must have a spy, like somebody in his camp is knowing what he wants to do and going back and telling Israel about his, surprise attacks. But his counselor said, no, that's not what's happening. He said, what's happening is Israel has this prophet named Elisha, and his God tells him stuff. He knows so much stuff that he knows the stuff you talk about in the privacy of your own bedroom. He knows all this stuff. And so every time you try to set up an ambush, his God is telling him where the ambushes are, and he's telling the Israeli army, don't go that way. So the king says, oh, we got to do something about this dude. Go catch him. Go find him. He needs to be gotten rid of. So they find out that Elisha is in a nearby little town, small town called Dothan. So in the middle of the night, he sends out his army, and they surround this town of Dothan, right? Elisha's assistant wakes up, comes out of whatever little house or something that they're in, and notices that the Syrian army is just everywhere. He's like, boss, You know, we got big problems. So he goes in, he gets Elisha. Elisha comes out, and Elisha says, don't worry. There's more with us than there are with them. Y'all know the story. Elisha he has become aware of at least three things, several things he's become aware of. He's become aware, number one, that there is the presence of this angelic army, right? His angels, his chariots of fire. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, right? He's aware of their presence. He's also aware of the reason why they're there. He's aware of their purpose. So I can say, I need some help. I'm in trouble. And then I see Tim over there. Oh, I need a ride. I need a ride real bad. You know, I'm stuck somewhere. And you show up, but you driving an Uber and you showed up to pick up somebody else. So even though you're there, it's like, oh, I know Tim is here, but he ain't here for me, right? So that's not going to help me. But he knows that these angels are there. He also knows that all of these angels are there for him and his servant, right? And so you can know somebody is there. You can know somebody is there for you. But I'm about to get attacked by a burglar. And so I know Wendy is here. I know Wendy is here for me. But what is Wendy going to do? Right? But he's aware that this army is here. This army is here for us. And this army can do something. That's why he said, don't be afraid. Don't worry. Fear not. Because it's an army here on our behalf. But how is he aware of this army that's present? How is he aware of why they're there? How is he aware of what they're capable of? Because it's something that he's cognizant of that his eyes can't tell him. His ears aren't telling him. His sense of taste is not telling him. He can't smell them. These are beings that transcend his five senses. Yet, he's perfectly aware that they're present, that they can help him, that they're there to help him, and that they're capable of helping him. And so he says, he prays, and he asks God, he said, please allow my servant, this is where I want to get my little pen. Please allow my servant to have his eyes open that he may see, right? Open his eyes that he may see. So he's not asking God to open his assistant's physical eyes because his physical eyes are not blind. And if these angelic beings were manifesting themselves in a physical kind of way, he would have already saw them. And the Syrian army would have saw them. Nobody can see them, or nobody knows they're there except for Elisha, because he's the only one whose eyes are open. So he's saying, Lord, open up his eyes that he may see. So when I was studying this, we all know that the Old Testament is written in Hebrew. And my wife had us learn some Hebrew for a while. It was pretty interesting. But I try to learn a little bit just only in the context of when I'm trying to study something to make sure I understand what the words are. And so Elisha says, Lord, please open up his eyes. The Hebrew word is ayin.
You want a paper towel?
No, I got my little eraser. I couldn't prepare it. I couldn't prepare it. So the Hebrew word is ayin, like that, right? That's eyes. Gets translated as eyes into English. But it has two meanings. The first meaning is the physical eye, your eyeball, in your socket of your skull. But its other meaning in Hebrew, when somebody says ayin in ancient Hebrew, they are referring to the spiritual faculties. Okay? So he says, open up his ayin that he may see. That word is, and Tiff is better at I am than rolling her R's. But it's ra'ah. Ra'ah, right? And we translate that into English as the word see. But actually, in ancient Hebrew, it is to perceive. Okay? It is to be aware of things. So Elisha is saying, Lord, bless my servant so that his spiritual faculties, we know he's not talking about his actual eyes, faculties. We know he's not talking about his actual eyes because he doesn't have any issue with his physical sight. He's saying, Lord, open up his spiritual faculties so that he can perceive and be aware of the same stuff that I'm perceiving and that I'm aware of, right? And so when God does this for the servant, now all of a sudden the servant is aware of all the same stuff that Elisha is. He realizes and recognizes that they are surrounded by this angelic army with all these angelic beings. I think what's kind of happened with us is that we don't realize that that particular story in 2 Kings chapter 6 is actually an almost perfect illustration of what faith actually is. I think what we do now is we confuse faith with what hope actually is, and we think hope is something different altogether than what hope actually is. So you have in 2 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, and it starts off with, and I think we could look at the very last verse of that. It starts off with, I can do all these things. It doesn't matter. I'm just a sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal. If I do not have love, I can give my body to be burned. I can do all these great things. And if I don't have love, it doesn't matter. And then love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not self-seeking. Love is not easily provoked. Love is all these great things. And then it gets down to the very last verse. And it says that there remains these three things. And it makes me think about, the Olympics, or it makes me think about a beauty pageant, or it makes me think about, Josh doing debate or whatever. And you got all these participants and you end up with these top three that we want to honor, right? And so even if you're not in first place, we still think that the people who came in second and third are so significant. You just competed against 100 other people, and we want to recognize you because even though you're not in first place, you still did something really great. Like you're up there, right? So you're going to be on the podium. And so Paul is saying, here's these three things that we should kind of say, woo, like these are some three real important things for us Christian folk. He says, there remains these three things. There's faith, hope, and love. Now he said, number one, first place, the greatest of these is love. But he still said faith and he said hope, right? We hardly ever talk about hope. Because when we think about hope, we have something stuck in our mind with the modern, in our modern vernacular, the way we use the word hope. And I thought it was interesting because even when I checked the dictionary 14, 15 years ago, because we misuse the word hope so often, what happens is society starts morphing the meanings of words because we start using them wrong, that the dictionaries just give up and they start putting entries in the way we use it instead of what the word actually originally meant. So when I looked at the definition that I found 15 years ago, it's actually changed when I looked it up just recently when I started doing this study again, because they flip-flop the entry. So now the first entry in the dictionary, I looked at Webster's, I looked at dictionary.com, I looked at a few. The first entry is hope means something that we desire or want to happen. The second entry, which is really what the Bible is talking about when the Bible talks about hope, is a genuine expectation of something happening based upon some other reason. Okay? But when the Bible talks about hope, it's talking about that second definition, not the first one. But when we talk about hope, we're so used to saying, I wanted to go to Carowinds tomorrow. I hope it doesn't rain. I hope that, this happens. I hope that, I just saw her fall down off the swing set. That little child, I hope she's okay, right? And so it's like what we wish, our desire for something to be, but it's not necessarily a genuine expectation of it happening. We just want it to be that way, right? But biblical hope that's found in the Bible, that's why Paul elevated and said, this is an important thing. I'm not saying it's number one, but it's up there. Hope is what we tend to think faith is, because we will say, God said X, and I believe that he's going to bring it to pass. He's going to make X happen because he said X, and I'm going to stand and believe that one day X is going to happen. X is going to manifest. X is going to come to pass. That's so important. We have to do that. God wants us to do that. It's a big, big deal. But that's not faith. That's hope. And so we think that's faith, and so we talk about faith like it's hope, and then we don't realize what hope is. And since we think faith is hope, then we don't really know what faith is. You understand? Faith is actually the ability that God gives all of us the measure of to be able to deal with, interact with, be aware of, be cognizant of spiritual things that our five senses can't deal with. That's what faith is, right? So Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. He said, if my kingdom were of this world, I'll have my servants down here fighting, so that when y'all trying to pick me up and put me up on this cross, my boys would be coming and making sure that doesn't happen to me. He said, but my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is of another world. But when we come into his kingdom that is of another world, we are literally, even in this room, as Christian people, we're saying that like the meat, the very, very heart of our existence, everything that we're about, everything we care about, everything that we talk about has to do with us being in this kingdom that we can't even see, that we can't even hear for the most part, that we can't touch for the most part. And we're serving this king and this kingdom that our five senses cannot help us out with, right? But it's the biggest thing in our lives. And so we're serving this God of this spiritual kingdom who is a spirit himself. And he's saying, you need a way to interact with me and deal with stuff that I'm dealing with you on that your five senses can't do anything about. And your mechanism to be able to deal with me is called faith. Okay? So our faith is our ability to deal with, to be cognizant of, to recognize spiritual things. Now, I just want to say something that I wrote down, because I don't want to just read my whole thing. I'm trying to write myself kind of like a little book. I might be an author one day. Let's see how that goes. But one thing that I wrote down was, I can't find it, but it came to my mind. I think we think about faith being kind of either a force, something that does something. And I want to show you from scripture that I don't believe that's true. And we can open it up. We can have conversation. We also believe, and I've been taught this, I won't put it on you. I have believed, I was taught essentially that faith is almost like a spiritual crane, right? And so here's the spirit realm, right? And I need something manifested. I need God to do something for me. I need something to come to pass. So my faith is almost like a crane, and it reaches down in the spiritual place. It picks up what I need. It goes over here and drops it like one of them, machines at Chuck E. Cheese where it goes down, You try to pick up a ball or some toy, and drops it out, and it comes out into the manifested realm. I don't believe that's what faith is. Hope. I want to kind of try to lay this out to just even make sure we kind of understand how these two things relate. Right now, we need a new refrigerator. We just praying. It's hanging on our refrigerator. It's like I'm trying to keep serving. But we got ready to buy a refrigerator. We are going to order a refrigerator online, and we ended up not doing it. But if we went on there and we bought a refrigerator, right? And I go on there and I pick the refrigerator that I want, and it ends up being a button. I put in our credit card number, and then this little button that says "Pay Now," right? Before I do this, let's look at Hebrews chapter 11 real quick. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 11. And I just want to read the first piece of that. Or if somebody else can help me read that. You can actually start at verse 1, and then we can go to let's just stop at verse 3 for now, and we'll come back to this. So if somebody can read verses 1, 2, and 3, I would appreciate it.
Faith is the confidence that we hope for will actually happen. Faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us an assurance about things we cannot see. Through faith, the people in days of old earned a good reputation. By faith, we understand that the entire universe was formed at God's command. That what we now see did not come from anything that can be seen.
Amen. So, saying faith is, we've read this so many times, faith is the substance of things hoped for. It's the evidence of things not seen. So, if I order this refrigerator, right, I hit the button that says pay now. I'm going to get this thing in my email that confirms that I made this purchase. Okay. It's called a receipt. All right. So what I'm going to be able to do is, if y'all come over the house and y'all see our old raggedy refrigerator over here, I can say to all of you right now, I have a new refrigerator. It's mine. I bought it. I own it. Even though I cannot see it, I can't hear it, taste it, touch it, I can't open it, I can't get anything out of it, but it is literally mine. How do I know? Because faith is the substance. It is the receipt that shows you. I can get on my computer and I can say, see, I made the order yesterday, 4 o'clock. That refrigerator is in a warehouse somewhere, right? Eventually, somebody's going to go, they're going to put a tag on the side of it. It's going to say Broom, scheduled for delivery, blah, blah, blah. My faith makes me aware. It's that receipt that came through that said, even though I can't see this, it's mine. I own it. It belongs to me. That's why it says, I believe it's in 1 John chapter 4, it says, this is the confidence that we have in him, that whatsoever we ask of him, we believe that we have received it. It said, but we know that we have the petitions that we have made of him. If it is according to his will, it says, right? So in other words, if you ask God for something, if God's answer, you can't make God's answer be yes, but if God's answer is yes, right? Then the Bible says, I know that I have, present tense, the things that I requested of him. If he said yes, meaning that that thing, just like that refrigerator, is mine now. My expectation that at some point, somebody's going to put it on a truck, load it up, bring it to my house, and drop it off is hope. The receipt tells me the refrigerator is mine. The receipt makes me aware that it is mine, even though I can't see it. Hope is my expectation somebody's going to put it on a truck and bring it to my house at some point within the next few days or the next week or two. Faith and hope, all right? Two different things. So what we tend to do is, I think we don't recognize that faith is this mechanism that allows us to be aware of or cognizant of information. Okay. Here's another illustration I want to share. And this is what I kind of struggle with, because I'm like, I think faith is different than that, because how many times has Jesus said to somebody, your faith has made you whole, right? Your faith did that. So here's an illustration. Well, we have a couple examples. You think about the woman with the issue of blood, right? She's, gone to all the doctors. Nobody can figure anything out. At some point, somehow, she becomes aware. However it happened, however it came, she realizes that if I touch his garment, I'm going to be made whole. Somehow I'm aware of this information, right? But I have to do something, okay? I'm going to act upon what I'm realizing is true. It didn't necessarily mean that any given person who touched the hem of his garment would be healed. It's a lot of people who touched him. And he's like, but wait a minute, some particular person touched me and I felt virtue come out of me. I felt power. The Bible is actually talking about dunamis power, the kind of power that comes from God that affects things manifestly and physically. So it's a spiritual power that manifests itself in the natural, and you can feel it sometimes, and it can do physical things, right? He said, I felt that dunamis power leave my body, even though they're like, so many people touching you. It's a lot of people who are sick that's touching you. Everybody was trying to get at him, all kinds of diseases, all kinds of issues, all kinds of problems. But he's like, when this particular lady touched me, somehow, for whatever reason, that was being offered to her and being made available to her, but it wasn't something that her five senses made available to her or let her know that that was true. Somehow, her faith allowed her to be able to say, me, whatever my name is, Sarah, Kim, Nikki, whatever my name is, when I touch him, if I do it, I'm going to get healed. And then she acted upon that. The centurion, he had a servant, right, who was sick. And he said, if you guys can help me out and make sure that Jesus becomes aware of my servant being sick, he could take care of my servant. They come back, they give Jesus the word. Hey, this guy I know he's a Roman, but he's great. He's been helping us out. He helped us with our synagogue. What I imagine happened, being that he's a Roman soldier, I think that he was sympathetic to the Jews. And so he was, when they were trying to get their temple together, I think he was there like, stand down, don't nobody mess with these people. Because the Romans were always persecuting them. That's why Jesus talked about, if one of these soldiers comes and mess with you and makes you carry their stuff, just carry it. If they say, give me your coat, give them 2 coats, just because they were always messing with them. But I think this Roman was like, y'all chill out. These are good people. Let them build their synagogue. I'm going to watch out for them. I'm going to make sure that they're good, that they're straight. And so they came to Jesus and they said, this Roman guy, he's not a Jew, he's a Roman, but he's a good man. Could you please help him? And Jesus said, okay, yeah, I'll help him. Where's his servant? I'll go and see what I'm gonna do for him. And then the Roman soldier said, oh, you don't even have to come. Go back and let him know you do not have to come, because I understand how these things work. I'm aware somehow. I know, I have this information that this person, Jesus, has the power to heal my servant without even having to go see him. He's got some type of authority that's similar to my natural authority, that when I tell my boys jump, they say how high. And I realize and recognize that he has that kind of power spiritually. Jesus said, I have not found anyone with that kind of faith in all of Israel. In other words, Jesus is saying that this man had the ability that his five senses did not help him with to recognize who I was and what I could do and what was available to him through me. And so few people have that. Somehow he was able to see that. Wow, I'm really impressed. I haven't seen faith like that with all the Hebrew people. And this guy's a Roman. Somehow he's got that ability to see something beyond what his natural senses can tell him. And he realized who I was and what I could do. Whew, that's powerful. And so he healed him. He healed the servant. But what's happening, if you notice with faith, is when these people became aware of what was available to them, it might have been available to anybody, or it might have been situations where it was only being made available to them. But they became aware of it, and then they acted on it. That's why it says faith without works is dead, right? Faith is not doing stuff by itself. And so here's the illustration that I would give. And I remember giving this years ago. This was back when Bill Gates used to be the richest person in the world. Now somebody else, right? It's Bezos. I think it's Jeff Bezos now, the richest person in the world. Whoever, one of those super rich guys. And I said, imagine Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or whoever, Mark Zuckerberg. Imagine if they put on a disguise, right? And they went out onto the street corner in some big city and dressed up like a homeless person, had a cardboard sign, right? And they decided, I'm going to make somebody a millionaire. If they just recognize who I am, I'm gonna put on a fake beard, I'm gonna, dress all scruffy, I'm gonna have Kool-Aid stains on my sweatshirt, I'm just gonna look all scruffy and nasty. But I'm gonna have this cardboard sign, and at the very bottom of the cardboard sign, it's gonna say, I'm actually Bill Gates. And if you recognize who I am, I'll give you $1 million. But everybody's just walking past him, nobody's paying attention. They just think he's, some homeless guy. But all of a sudden, a particular person just stops and it's like, that dude just looks familiar. And then you just take a little bit more interest and you say, what's that sign say? And then you realize it's saying, I'm Bill Gates. I'll give you $1 million. And you're still like, but man, it does look like Bill Gates. It does look like Bill Gates. And then you say something to the person and you say, are you Bill Gates? And he says, you know what? I actually am Bill Gates. It's some hidden camera somewhere, how they have the, I don't watch it, but I think they have like a show where, it's some famous person, but they come and disguise themselves and like work in the restaurant or work like a cab driver or whatever on their own business to see. And so he's like, I'm Bill Gates. And he said, but if you recognize me, I'll make you a millionaire. And so you stop and you say, I think you're Bill Gates. You got this little sign that said you'll make me a millionaire. And then Bill Gates says, you know what? Today, your awareness has made you a millionaire. Wouldn't that be fair to say that even though what actually would make you a millionaire in that case, right? What would really make you a millionaire would be your recognition of who he was, your awareness, right? And then your response to what you became aware of. And then Bill Gates's ability and faithfulness to come through on his promise. It's not just your awareness, but he could still say, you know what? Today, your awareness has made you a millionaire. That's what Jesus was doing. When Jesus said, you know what? Today, your faith has made you whole. It wasn't your faith that produced its own power to heal your body. I healed your body. It was my power. It was my virtue. It was my ability that healed your body. But you recognized, you were able to see something that your five senses weren't making you aware of, that you realized that it was me and what I could do for you, and you acted and you asked me for it. Right? So it wasn't just your faith, it was your faith that made you aware of what was available to you, and then you acted appropriately or responsively to what you became aware of, right? So it wasn't just only the faith itself. And then from that point, we ask, Lord, would you bring it to pass? I believe you're going to bring it to pass. I know you're going to do this. If your answer is yes. And sometimes we talked about rhema word, right? Sometimes God will confirm. You asked me, and my answer to you, sometimes we pray and pray and pray. I don't know, God, what your will is on this, but I'm asking. I'm being importunate. Like, like the lady that kept coming to the judge. Lord, I want justice. I want justice. I want justice. Or the man that kept knocking on his friend's door. Like, I got some people that came to the house. I want you to wake up and give me some bread. I need to borrow some stuff. And he kept knocking and knocking and knocking to the dude finally said, I'm tired of hearing him knock. I'm going to get up and do something. The judge said, I'm tired of hearing this woman keep coming to me every day. I'm going to do something for her. So sometimes we're importunate because we don't know that God has said yes. And so we keep asking him because it's something that's important to us. But sometimes you ask the Lord for something, and at some point, some way, somehow, he confirms to you, yes, I'm going to do that. The answer to that is yes. Or you didn't even ask me, Kim. I told you. It's something that I said to you when you were 18 that I was going to do this, and you know he did it. And every once in a while you say, did God really say this? Did God really say this? And it's not your eyes or your ears or your nose or your mouth that confirm to you that he did say it. You check in with what? Your faith. You go back and you look at your receipt. My refrigerator's still not here yet. Do I really have one? Wait a minute. Let me go back and look at my receipt. It says Ron Broom, Kenmore, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. It's in the warehouse somewhere. I don't know when the thing is going to get delivered. I thought it should have been here by now. But when I do start losing that feeling of, is it ever going to come? I go back and I open up my email. I look at that receipt and it says, I remember I pushed that button. I remember it took the money out my credit card. I see my receipt. It says Ron Broom owns this refrigerator. I can't make that up. I can't decide that. But when God says yes, and your faith gets in tune with, yep, yeah, God said that. At some point, it's going to get on the truck, and it's going to come to the house. Don't know when. Sometimes it happens pretty quick. You're like, woo, that was some fast service. Sometimes when God says yes, and sometimes it's like years and years and years. And then you stop and you say, wait a minute. Let me check my receipt. Faith is the substance. It's what you actually have of what you don't have manifested. My receipt is what I have of what I don't have manifested. Right? So that's what faith is. There's just a couple more things that I wanted to say about it. And it slipped in my mind. I wanted to come back because I really want to share this. I'm just going to not rely on my memory. I'm going to go back to this because I'm almost done. And then we can talk about some of this stuff. Yes, I know the last thing that I really want to talk about is two things, because I want to talk about how we could actually implement this practically. And I thought it was interesting because, Michaela, whenever you hear this later, I think it kind of goes a little bit to the question that you were asking us this morning on Instagram, or asking people to bring back to you. But if you keep reading down through Hebrews chapter 11, and it's talking about all the different people who walked and lived by faith, one of the things that stood out to me most was Abraham. Can we read that, just the part about Abraham when he was offering up Isaac? I'm not exactly sure what verse that was.
By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out, to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to a city that has a foundation, whose designer and builder is God. Is that all you want to
Yeah, I'm trying to get to it. It should be a part. It might be a little bit later where he talks about when he was getting ready to offer up Isaac and believed that God would raise Isaac from the dead.
Oh, right here.
Yes.
By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back.
Amen. This is deep. Please think about this. Some of you may have already thought about this. I'm not saying that I'm trying to be deep. I'm saying it's deep to me every time I think about it. What Abraham said was, God made me this promise. It wasn't through Ishmael. It wasn't through anybody else. It was through Isaac, that in Isaac shall your seed be called. Isaac doesn't have any kids yet. God tells Abraham, go and sacrifice him up. What kind of sacrifice was he going to do? Well, you go back and read that in Genesis. He said, I'm going to take my son up to Mount Moriah. What did he tell Isaac to put on his back? Wood. What kind of offering did he say he was going to give? A burnt offering. A burnt offering. He was going to stab Isaac through the heart. And then after he stabbed Isaac through the heart, he was going to light Isaac on fire and burn his body to a crisp. But the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 11, not that Abraham believed, when I take my son up, somehow God is going to make a provision and put a ram in the bush and I'm not going to have to do this. It didn't say that. Hebrews 11 said he thought he was going to offer Isaac up and then God was going to raise Isaac from the dead. That's what Abraham was thinking. When you think about the times in the Bible that folks have gotten raised from the dead, think about Jairus' daughter, right? And it's just kind of easier for my mind to get around because she had died just so recently that it's like, oh, she just died. And when they got there, even the disciples was like, oh, she just sleep. You know, she cool. Let her just. And Jesus like, no, she ain't just sleep. But if you just believe, everything will be all right. He put everybody out of the room except for 3 of his disciples and her parents. And then he said, Talitha kum, which means, young woman, arise, right? But when I think about that, I'm like, I can just see a young girl just died a few hours before, might still just look like she's asleep. Jesus comes in, you know. Next person I think about, Lazarus. He's sick. Come help him. Jesus is not coming. That's a whole nother lesson. Like, he let stuff die. Like, can you please come now? So by the time he showed up, Martha had an attitude. I don't know if you read that in John chapter 11. She's like, you know, a few chapters before that, everybody's like, they brought their friend to Jesus and he couldn't talk. He was mute and deaf. And Jesus put his fingers in his ears and touched the man's tongue. And the man was able to hear. And, you know, his tongue was loose. He was able to talk. And everybody's like, oh, he does all things well. He does all things well. He does all things well. Everybody's cheering his praises. Now, when he lets John die, and like, by the time he shows up, Martha did not say hello. She didn't say, hey, gee. The first thing she said was, you should have been here. That was like literally her first words to Jesus. You didn't get here on time. Like, he's dead now. Jesus said, it doesn't matter that he's dead and she said, well, yeah, you know, I know he'll be alive in the resurrection. He's like, I'm the resurrection right now. You don't got to wait for the resurrection. I'm the resurrection now. One of the reasons I believe that he let Lazarus die was because, and I learned this like within the last few years, and you guys might already know this, but in ancient Hebrew culture, their belief was that the spirit of a person still hovered over the body for 3 days, right? So you could have, you know, today, even when we talk about let's have a wake, and we don't really necessarily believe somebody's going, you know, be raised from the dead, you know, they're full of embalming fluid and all that. But back then, it's like, you know, we can pray. We can call out to Yahweh. You know, we got 3 days to try to see, you know, if he'll bring the spirit back into the body. But Jesus was like, I'm going to get there after y'all think that this can't happen. Like, after 3 days, it's too late. After 3 days, we don't have embalming fluid. We don't have, and so he's getting to the point where his flesh is starting to rot. And his spirit that was hovering over his body, like, it's gone now. Like, there's no hope. It's over. Now I'm showing up to let y'all know that if I want him to get up, he's going to get up, right? But I can think of, even after 3 days, right, you're starting to your flesh is starting to stink. And I'm like, oh, that's like more. That's like kind of like, you got him up. Like, whoa. I could see Jairus' daughter. But Lazarus, he's starting to stink. And that's pretty powerful. Think about what Abraham was thinking. I'm going to stab. He's going to have a big, giant, gaping wound in his chest, in his heart. And then he's going to look like a piece of charcoal. But God is going to get this boy up. Why? Because even though my eyes would be telling me, lump of charcoal. My nose would be telling me, burnt flesh. Burnt to a crisp flesh. My ears would be telling me, crackle, 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 crackle. His flesh is being consumed by the flames. But wait, let me check my receipt.
Come on.
My receipt says, in Isaac shall your seed be called. Right? If I had another boy and you just said, my seed is going to, I'm going to have offspring like the stars of the sky. It's going to be like the sand on the seashore. But it doesn't matter which one of my boys it is. So, Isaac, I'm sorry, man. Sorry. That's what God told me to do to you. But the receipt said, in this boy is where all these promises is going to come through. But you didn't tell me I wasn't going to kill him, and you didn't tell me I wasn't going to burn him. You just told me through him will my seed come. And my seed cannot come from a burnt up lump of charcoal. So if I burn him up into a lump of charcoal, you're going to restore him back to a condition where he can go be with the woman, have some babies, so you can keep my promise, because I have a receipt. My faith. The Bible says, by faith, Abraham said, God will raise him up. I'm aware of something. I'm aware of something that doesn't have anything to do with what my five senses are telling me. And when I think about that kind of faith, Abraham's come to be known as the father of faith. He had the kind of faith that God said, because of him, just the way he believed was his righteousness. And so now he's our heritage because we ended up becoming Abraham's seed. And it's like now it's not any longer by the letter of the law. I was doing that in the meantime, but I'm going to flip y'all back over as we get into this new covenant. We're going to go back to doing it how Abraham did it. You're just going to be saved and made righteous just because you believe. Just because when I tell you, I changed you. And this is what I want to say to my daughter. When I look at myself sometime, and I actually did this like literally a couple days ago, knowing that, I was supposed to talk about this, and I was upstairs in our bedroom. I just looked in the mirror and I was just looking at me and just kind of unhappy with some things with myself. I'm kind of unhappy with my body. I'm kind of unhappy with just some of and we've been going through a process of where we've been trying to get our minds renewed, and just, some of the gook and gunk that's still kind of in my mind over things. And I was just looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, you ain't all that I want you to be. But let me check in with my receipt. Let me check in with my faith. And then I looked at myself again and I said, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creation. Behold, old things are passed away. Behold, Ra'ah, all things have become new. Take a second look at yourself, not with your physical eyes, but take a look at yourself with these eyes, and you'll see the new creature that God has made you. So I'm saying to you, Kay, to take a second look. When literally I was in the mirror and I was taking the first look, and something reminded me, no, use your other eyes. Use your spiritual faculties. Use your ayin and ra'ah yourself, and not just use your physical eyes and see yourself. Use your ayin and ra'ah yourself and see who you really are, because God has said something totally different about you, and it's not one of those things that is going to come to pass later. It's not one of those things where we're waiting for it to get on the truck. there's certain things that we want to manifest in our lives. We were talking about earlier when we started talking today, changes that we want to see, changing from glory to glory. Us becoming more mature, us becoming more like Christ, us thinking better and acting better, doing better. That's the stuff that's still on the truck that's getting delivered. And we still are having hope. Like, I'm going to become better and better and better. I'm going to keep changing more and more and more. But there are certain things that are in place right now. I'm a new creature now. That's not on the truck waiting to come. I'm a new creature today. And so when I look at my receipt and consider who I am with those different eyes, then I'm seeing something different. And so the question that we had was, knowing that, how do we walk in outward confidence of who we know we actually are, who we've been made? For Christ was made to be sin, even though he knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. So we've been made righteous. How do we walk and live in a way where we know we're righteous? How do we walk in a confidence of knowing who we are? And the one answer that I would offer or posit is that I think the more often we use these eyes to keep checking our receipt, I think it begins to affect us on a mental level. I think when we keep doing things on a spiritual level, it actually begins to, Sister Nikki talked about first thing today, Romans chapter 12, to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. I think the mental transformation comes from spiritual concentration. We keep looking at ourselves and we keep looking at life and we keep looking at our situations with this spiritual mechanism that God has given us called faith. And faith doesn't do all the things by itself that we have been taught faith does, but faith makes us aware of stuff that we can act on, because faith without works is dead. God tells me, this is who you are in me now. You're my son now. Because you are a child of Abraham, just because of your faith, just because you believe on my name, that whosoever just calls upon my name will be saved. Because you believe that, bam, I've done something inside of you, quickened you, made you a new creature. Now it's your job to focus on that. It's your job to stay aware of that. And I've given you a mechanism to do that. It's called faith. So I just want us to think about the difference between faith and hope. And the reason why I'm basically done, but the reason why I think one of these things is important, it's not just because I want to teach about faith. It's because I don't like how hope gets underplayed. Because if we think that faith is hope, then we're always talking about faith, but it's really hope. And then we're not giving hope any credit for what hope actually is, right? Hope is amazing. Hope is something I read. I listened to the audiobook, and Tiff and the kids read a book by Viktor Frankl called The Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was, he was a Jew that was caught in the Holocaust. And man, he was, malnourished. He just, looked like when you see the, pictures of the Jews that have gone through the Holocaust, and just had him naked every day, just stripped him of his dignity, stripped him of his humanity. And the whole book is about how he decided that I don't have to be what everyone is saying that I am. Even though you strip me naked, even though you don't feed me the way I'm supposed, even though you don't treat me like a human, I know who I am. And so I'll keep going through this concentration camp every day, either until I get out or until I die. But you're not going to decide who I am. I'm going to continue to say who I am. But I thought what was powerful about it, excuse me, was that he was saying hope, literal hope, his belief and his expectation that one day I'm going to get out this concentration camp. He literally believed and expected one day I'm going to leave this concentration camp. After he got out the concentration camp, he said literally it was hope that literally kept him alive. He said, if I would have stopped believing that I was going to get out of the concentration camp, I would have died. He was like, it would have been a few days. Like all of my will would have broke down, and just all of my volition, and like like I've heard people talk about it, like my literal physical well-being just starts deteriorating because I just start believing I'm going to die. He was like, but because I had hope, I believed that I was going to get out of here. Literally kept me alive. Hope is powerful. But hope has to rest upon the foundation of something that it can sit upon. And your faith is making you aware of the stuff that your hope rests on. The refrigerator is coming, and I keep believing that my refrigerator is going to get delivered because of my receipt. If I don't have any receipt, why do I think a refrigerator is coming one day? It's because I keep looking at my receipt saying, I got a refrigerator. I got a refrigerator. That's why I keep believing that it's going to get delivered. Amen. That's all I had. But we could talk. We can. If anybody has anything they want to say about it, I would love that. And then I'm going to bring this around if you have something to say, so Kay will be able to hear you when we share it. Thank you, honey. Anybody? Tay, I see you, sister. Yeah, it's a little bit of delay. Anybody have anything that they want to say, or anything that made you think about, or you already thought about that, or whatever?
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, go.
It was very deep. I just thought it was so deep. I mean, the whole thing, from where you talked about Lazarus. I think even that part was, we hear the stories all the time, but it was so deep because, when you look at Abraham, Lazarus, you just think about, man, your situation could seem dead.
Yeah.
But how God, how he could still make life out of that dead situation. I just thought about that. I thought about Abraham as well. And I was like, Abraham had to, because back then, if I'm correct, I don't think nobody was being raised from the dead. If I'm correct. Because you see a lot of that came about when Jesus came into the picture. In the New Testament. So I guess for him to even think of that, to me, that was powerful. He had to have some type of revelation about God. Some type of I guess his faith and hope back then had to be like way behind. I don't know, because I think for a lot of us, we will be like, ain't no way. We're not thinking that, okay, God, yeah, you said I'm going to have a child, but now you're telling me to kill him, and that can't be possible. We will overanalyze, but I think Abraham had to have some type of, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe his relationship was just way beyond. For him to really think that, God, I'm looking at my receipt, going back to the whole receipt. And I love the way you gave that example, because, based on that example right there, it's almost like it gave me a better understanding of faith and even hope. I've never really heard it explained like that, because many times we don't really think of hope. We think a lot about faith, but we're not thinking, oh my gosh, about hope. So I think the way you brought down, you the two, I think that was, I don't know, it's phenomenal. Yeah, but that's what I was thinking. I just thought about Abraham, and I said, wow. I said Abraham had to have some type of revelation about God back then. That he knew that, listen, I don't care, I know somehow you're going to restore him, you're going to bring him back something. So I thought that was powerful.
Amen. Anybody else? I mean, whatever you want to say. It doesn't have to be necessarily.
I mean, I just wanted to say, like, I mean, like, same
Okay.
thing. I never heard it like that before, and that was amazing. That was really, really amazing. But I just wanted to say, like, I've heard faith in this way, like, because my one of my uncles, he's an artist, like, he made music and things like that, and he made a song called "It Takes Faith," and the song is really short. There's just a couple of lyrics to it saying, "It takes faith to step out on nothing and believe that something is there. And then it just goes on, it takes faith. So like when I hear that type of faith, you know what I mean, to have that receipt, to know that there's something there.
Yeah.
There's something there. There's a bridge God had ordered, and it's there. So I can step out on here and know that it's there.
Right.
And it took the faith to believe that it's there. And the action is to step out. You know?
Right.
Faith without works is dead. You have to do something. Have to go out there and put all your trust in it. And that's where the hope is. Right? And that's where the hope lies, saying, I know for sure that there's a bridge because I got the receipt that the bridge is there. You know what I mean? And it was phenomenal. Like she said, it was like there's no words for it. That was great to be able to use and know I can use that later on this week. Know I can use that, you know, with my family, and we can grow on that. I mean, I know she's over there feasting on it right now, and I am too. It's a really good word. Praise God.
I want it for myself. I'm trying to use it on me. I'm trying to use faith when I consider myself and who I am, and to be able to see myself in the right light, because my physical eyes is not enjoying this extra 50 pounds.
I just wanted to ask a question based on, you know, when you gave those the Hebrew words, and based on where you were talking about Elisha. And I know the other night I was reading same, you know, in Romans, and he was talking about it's verse 11 where it says that God has given them a spirit of stupor, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear to this very day. Right. So when I was reading that, I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, I thought about the spirit of stupor. I think some Bible verse will say a spirit of like stumbling. And so I, you know, when Joe and I, we was having the conversation, we was like, could it be that the reason why we're not able to see in the spirit, or, you know, because if he's saying he gave them eyes to where they could not see, ears to where they could not hear. And we were just talking about the whole, like the prophetic, because, you know, for you would have to have eyes to hear, eyes to see and ears to hear. So we were talking about that, and we was like, could it be today why a lot of us is still having issue like seeing in the spirit or hearing clearly, is because we may be walking in that spirit of slumber. That's what it was, the spirit of slumber. Yeah. So I was telling him, I said, now, you know, I think it's very important for us to, you know, we were just talking, and I said, I think it's important for us to pray that God will remove that spirit of slumber. Because I was telling him, I think a lot of us still cannot see and hear clearly, or, you know, as Minister King was saying, we this year we will have to be able to discern and know God for real, you know, what he's saying from what he's not saying. But so I thought about Elisha when, you know, he was saying, God, open the eyes of my servant. So it took where God, because even in Romans, we see this was God's doing. He put that on them, you know, where they could not see or hear. So that's why I'm like, and he was saying even to this day, you know, and these were the children of Israel. So that's why I'm wondering, like, you know, is that the same for us today? You know, and even when you mentioned with Elisha that, you know, maybe a lot of us, we still, you know, aren't able to see the spiritual things or hear spiritual things because maybe we are walking in a spirit of slumber. So it just had me to think about that when you were preaching on that as well.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh my God. This was powerful. The thing that really stood out to me is the breakdown of hope, and hope is literally that sustaining power, but faith is the awareness. And when you said the centurion, who was a Roman, he was not even of the people, amongst the people that should have had the awareness, that's why Jesus was like, I've never even seen this great of faith, even from somebody that should have had the awareness. That just blew me away. And it's like, literally the awareness being the rock that the hope can stand on. So it's kind of like somebody that's sick in their body. When they have gained that awareness, they have perceived that roha, that's how they're able to keep continuing on. And without that awareness, the expectation, the hope, the expecting can't continue. People die prematurely, or
Right.
And I mean, just think really, that breakdown of hope and faith. I mean, you're so on it, like where a lot of people, even believers, they cannot even see it in that manner. That was just powerful to me. I mean, that's all. It was just powerful.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just what you were saying, going back to 2 Kings, where he says to his servant, I'm just going to read it. And the servant said, "Alas, my master, what shall we do?" He said, "Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." Then Elisha prayed and said, "O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." So the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. And I would say this to the kids quite a bit, and when we would have just different times, but that literally, if we could see in the spirit, there are spirits all around us right now. And like he said that he said there are more with us than those are who with them. And it's like you're scared of your circumstances, but if you could see and perceive that what's there. And so sometimes I'll just literally remind myself, like, there are spirits on my side fighting for us, and sometimes I will pray and ask that his angels would encamp around our territory and be fighting in the spirit for us. And we can't see that fight, but sometimes that awareness that we do have spirits fighting on our behalf, that the ministering angels are working things out for us, and that even though we can't see, and that this world just seems like it's so much, I mean, not saying it's not real, but I'm saying that it seems more, what word do I want to use? I don't know, more substantial than what is in the spirit, that the spirit is actually what is what is really driving things, and what's eternal and what really matters, not the temporal things. And just keeping that mindset, because it's like you get caught up in all the things that you see, but remembering that in the spirit that there are, just like he said, when he opened his eyes, he could see that there were more with them than with,
I think just one more thing that I would say as we get ready to eat is, honey, was it? Oh, it's The Pursuit of God, right? A.W. Tozer. You guys ever read that? I love that book. And I remember when I read that book, it really like encouraged me to try to go to a place where, if we think about it, we almost always tend to, as church people, when we want to encounter God, we always want him to manifest himself. We're at church and it's like, God, show up and like do stuff that lets us know, that you're here. And, not saying that it's not good. It is. But, we want you to do miracles. We want healing. We want, things to happen that lets us know, oh, you're in the room, right? And so we want God, we tend to be, well, what Paul said was, he says it's really better to, as opposed to being temporally minded, to be spiritually minded. That our minds tend to be upon the temporal, natural things around us that our five senses are into. He's like, but God is eternal and he wants us to be eternally minded, like he is. And so it's almost like we're always saying, we're so much about what we can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. So in order to show us that you're real. Like, come to us and do stuff, you know, that make us go, wow, you know, you're here, you know, and we feel something and we see something happening. And this dude was blind and now he can see, and like, come and show up and do stuff that our five senses can pick up so we can go, wow. But God is like, y'all always want me to come to y'all, but I want y'all to come to me. But I'm a spirit and all my stuff is spiritual. And so you can't come and hang out with me unless you got these kind of eyes. Because your kind of eyes don't work with my stuff. And so it's like, y'all always want me to come hang out with you, but y'all never want to come over to my house and hang out with me. But my house is spiritual. And you can't see nothing in my house without I am. You just got them natural eyeballs and you always want me to come to your house where you can see me show out. But I want you, and I remember when I read Pursuit of God, that was like the whole message of that book. It was just like to interact with and deal with God and try to have a relationship with him and to try to be with him where he is. You know what I mean? On that spiritual level, and not always trying to get him to come hang out. It's like, I come to your house sometime. Why don't you come to my house sometime? You know what I mean? We always meeting up at your house. You know, it's like friends where it's like, we always doing what you want to do. It's like, not that I don't ever want to do what you want to do, but sometimes, you know, come over to my place. But my place is just all spirit. Ain't nothing that your physical eyes can see. Nothing that your physical ears can hear. It's all spirit. Learn how to be at my house. Learn how to have the kind of awareness that you need to realize how cool my house is. My place. So.
I was just wondering if Tay might have anything.
Yeah. Hey, Tay, you got anything you want to say?
I was listening to what Brother Ron said about the faith part is the awareness. I think Kim touched on it too. That really opened my eyes too, because if you're not aware of the thing that you are believing for, then what are you holding on to? What is the hope? Like,
Right.
yeah, like you have to be aware of, if I would say, you have to be aware of the promises of God, or you got to be aware of, like you say, you looked in the mirror. There's something that you have to be aware of in order to be holding on to something, you know?
Right.
And so that was good, the way you explained the faith is the awareness. And then the hope, it ties in with the faith. But you have to be aware of it first. I really like that part. I didn't get on at the beginning, but when I came in right at that part, and I was like, wow, that was deep. That was deep. You have to be aware first. And then the receipt. I didn't get the whole receipt part, but if you know you done purchased something, if you know you done paid for something, it don't matter how long it takes to get there, you know it's coming.
Right.
And so, like you said, even if it's taking a while, go back, check your email. Yeah, I got the receipt. I know I got it. I know it's coming. And that's where we have to be patient and just, wait on it. Now, sometimes waiting is hard, but when you know it's coming, when you sure you know it's coming, it gives you more, courage. It gives you more patience and everything to wait for it. So I was truly blessed on the part that I did come in on. I'm so grateful that I was able to join y'all.
I'm grateful too. I'm so glad that you were able to do it. I'm sorry that I forgot about you though. Your face is inside that little iPhone. We were just talking and I forgot your little head was inside that little iPhone. Until Tiff was like, see if Tay got something to say. So I'm sorry I forgot you because your face was just over there inside a little 3 by 1/2 inch thing. All right. Well, we're getting ready to eat, and we're gonna pray over that. So I'm just gonna. Can I close this out in prayer and then pray over the food too?
We're gonna do communion, and this is going to probably take like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
If
All
you
right.
Give me 10 minutes.
All right. Yeah. Okay. We're getting ready. We're gonna do communion.
Okay, I'm gonna prepare prepare communion here so we can do it with y'all, okay?
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
All right now. Bye, KB.